questions?
One moment, hit the record button here.
So we have some general information about MCDOT and what we're doing, and then some more specific information that corresponds to kind of what's hot right now, what's going on right now, some of the recommendations that are in the budget that's being reviewed at the council, even as soon as 11:40 this morning, or 10:40 this morning. And it's pretty interesting, and the state legislative session concluded yesterday, and there are some significant elements in the legislature's work this year that are important to us. So I'll touch on those when it's appropriate in the presentation. So just a general overview. We are a big department. I think we're second to police in terms of size and budget. Obviously, all of us smaller than schools, but one of the larger departments within the county budget. Or county organization. We've got about 1,200 employees. The majority of those employees are focused on delivering transit service in the county. It's about 800 of those 1,200 are providing our transit service. The second largest component are highway services workers, people who are doing paving, drainage repair work, mowing, snow plowing, leaf collection. They have a seasonal work program. So that we have a base workforce that can handle our typical needs. And our typical needs are defined by a 2-inch snowstorm. So our workforce is geared around that size. And we have work that progresses throughout the year that keeps those folks busy year round. So in the summertime, they'll be doing paving work. In the springtime, they'll be doing drainage system repair work. In the summertime, they'll be doing mowing and other general maintenance too. And in the winter, they're focused on storm response. So it's an efficient way for us to have that workload. And then when we have things that are above and beyond that, that work's contracted out. Our smaller groups are working on our engineering projects and on our traffic operations, which we manage about 900 traffic signals in the county, and that's both the state and county systems. They're all integrated and managed together. Which is efficient in terms of traffic flow, but it's a little bit strange sometimes in terms of making changes to that infrastructure because we don't own it all, we just maintain it. We have a group of around 30 people that run our parking operation, and it's a really large parking operation. It's about 26,000 parking spaces. The vast majority of those are in the parking lot districts in Bethesda, Silver Spring, and Wheaton, and I'll touch on some of the aspects of that later in these slides. And am I leaving one out? Transit, I touched on transit. So the other groups are in our director's office, and Kevin is one of our director's office team working in the commuter services group.
Engineering.
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I just didn't say much about them.
Okay.
So our operating budget is around $287 million. And you can see in that chart how that money is used. So 2/3 of the funds are supporting the ride-on and other transit operations. About 10% of that is the parking operation, and then the other quarter, or slightly less than a quarter, is largely our traffic and highway groups, because the engineering group is funded largely in the capital improvements program. Transit, again, it's not just ride-on, but it's also a lot of community mobility services where we provide vouchers for low-income, disabled, and other individuals that can't drive and need to move around. So, and we operate the Medicare transportation system that's funded by the state in that group. Other transportation, I touched on some of this, is roadway maintenance, traffic signal operations, storm response, and we're getting away from calling it snow because we actually are probably spending more on wind and rain events than we are on snow these days. And then residential parking program and other smaller elements are part of that slice of the pie. And I touched on parking, and parking is both the parking lot districts where the commercial parking is and also parking in some of the transportation management districts like Shady Grove and North Bethesda, where they're on-street meters, and the residential parking program, the enforcement elements of that.
Morning.
Hello. Go on to the next slide. Our capital budget over the 6-year program is $4.5 billion. A lot of that is not county funded. There's big components of state and federal aid that make up that capital budget. You can see how that money is used. The majority of the funds are used in construction of improvements. The majority of that construction is in what we call level of effort projects, which are projects to keep the transportation system in a state of good repair. There's a smaller component that's allocated to new facilities or facility expansion. And then the next highest component is planning, design, and supervision, which is both the design services from consulting firms for capital projects and our oversight of the construction program. What we're trying to do with all of this effort is achieve a few different objectives. We're trying to make sure that we were providing a safe transportation system in the county. You're probably all familiar with our Vision Zero program, where we made very, very significant strides in reducing the number of serious and fatal collisions. Still nowhere close to zero. And over the last couple of years, the progress has been less even, given some of the impacts of the pandemic on people's state of mind and travel behavior choices. So a lot more speeding, a lot more impairment, and therefore a lot more serious and fatal collisions. But one of the things that we don't touch on often is this is a data-driven program. So we look at where those collisions are occurring and try to do improvements where the problem is, rather than chasing each individual crash. And we have had a very significant reduction in serious and fatal collision on what we call the county high incidence network. So it's masked by an overall increase, but the experience on where we've been focusing our energy is that we're having an impact there. We're also very focused on reducing our environmental footprint from transportation. This is ecological and climate related. There's a lot of water runoff from transportation facilities. We're trying to manage that. We're trying to increase the tree canopy and reduce the impacts of our transportation facilities on the ecosystem. And we're also trying to reduce the carbon footprint of the county's transportation network. Now, we make up about 40% to 42% of the county greenhouse gas emissions from transportation. The county operations element of that is like 4%, and the rest is people's private transportation choices. So we're transitioning our Better Ways to Work commuter services program to a travel smart program, because we need to have an impact not just on people's work commuting, but how they're making all of their trip choices. So Kevin is part of that organization, and we're doing more outreach in residential communities to have people understand what options are available for all of their trips, not just their commute trip. And again, with the pandemic and the change in commute patterns, the commute is even less significant than it was. It was something like 30 to 40% of trip making was related to journey to work. That's even lower now. It's probably 25 to 30%. So if we're focused only on that, we're missing the ball here on what really is driving people's travel in the county. And then the last element here is on the investments that we make unlock economic opportunity. So they create new capacity for development. They support redevelopment of existing areas. And when we're looking at the economic activity of the county, we also want to make sure that we're providing equitable access to our residents, so that it's not solely focused on people who can drive to the new job or drive to the new shopping opportunity or to the new Montgomery College location, but we're creating access for everyone, and that's the equitable access component of our focus. Like I mentioned, we're divided into 5 different operating divisions, and we are a highly decentralized organization. So those divisions operate not independently, but they all have their own budget, procurement, and personnel management authority, and they all manage their programs within each division. Our director's office coordinates the work of all those divisions, and we operate a couple cross-cutting programs. One is that commuter services or travel smart program, Another, which you may have worked with, is the development review function that our team tries to get the input from all of our divisions in a timely way to support development applications. We're more or less successful in that in different cases, depending on how well the coordination goes internally and how well constituted the development application is and how responsive the development team is to responding to comments. So, and then another element is our overall administrative team, which Emily is part of that team, our communications function, our budget oversight functions, and our overall personnel management functions. And then our bus rapid transit team is also in the director's office because it is drawing upon all of our divisions and is a very large part of the capital program.
So what's the difference between transportation engineering and traffic engineering?
Yeah, and neither is a great name. So the traffic engineering group operates the traffic signal systems, does traffic studies, signing and marking, response to resident concerns about traffic issues, speeding, safety. The transportation engineering division does our bridge inspections and does our drainage system work and does our major capital project delivery.
Oh, okay.
So we'll go through kind of the roles of each of these. Our transit division offers 4 different types of service in addition to the human services transportation. But we have Ride On Extra, which is a limited stop service, which is currently on Maryland 355, but 2 new routes are going to start this summer. The base Ride On system, which is what people are most familiar with, that's the county-wide transit network. Flash, which is an operation on US 29, is the first bus rapid transit corridor. And Flex, which is an on-demand service that anybody can use, and there's an app for you to request a ride, and you pay the standard dollar fare to get your ride, and then you can transfer to the other systems. But that operates in Wheaton, Glenmont, and Rockville.
So, is Extra like an express bus?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what
It's not
those,
a BRT, but it's an express bus?
About halfway in between. So the station amenities are a little bit greater, and for example, on Rockville Pike, the ride-on system has 75 to 80 stops, and the Extra has 13. So it's if you happen to be where those stops are, it's a much better trip.
But I would imagine, again, thinking about this, whether BRT or what have you, is that you can ride one of the traditional ride-on buses to that location and get on a bus.
Yep.
I lived in Chicago for 5 years, and they have a huge express bus. You learn to basically take, call it the slower bus, to get to the fast bus, that you can jump on the bus that doesn't have all the stops, right?
Yes.
And that, so it's only on 355 at the moment?
Right now, and there's 2 routes that will start late this summer or
Not
this
on
fall.
355?
Not on 355.
Which
and I'll
which
share
roads
those
are you are?
in a minute. And then Flash is bus rapid transit, which is a larger vehicle, off-board fare collection, a different station configuration, and even fewer stops. So this is the 2 new Ride-On Extra routes that are going to start. We broke ground earlier this spring. They will connect the Shady Grove Metro Station at one end to the universities at Shady Grove at the other end of these 2 routes. One, the Lime route, which is green, will use I-370 to go from Shady Grove Metro Station to Rio and Crown, to the DeCoverly housing area, to the Shady Grove Adventist Medical Center, and then to universities at Shady Grove. So that trip on Transit Now from Rio to USG is like a 45-minute transit trip, and it will be 6 or 8 when this is implemented. And then the other route follows Shady Grove Road, so it is going to serve the new innovation district that Boston Properties is developing along Shady Grove Road in the city of Rockville. It will also serve the Shady Grove Medical Center on the other side of the hospital campus, and then also terminate at USG. So these are the first 2 routes in a multi-route network that has been designed essentially to replace the Corridor Cities Transitway, since that project is no longer in the county master plan. and is not being advanced by the Maryland Department of Transportation anymore. So that serves the CCT routes in this area. There is another blue route, which you can kind of make out there, but that's following Goody Drive. And also serves, all of them tie in at USG as the main hub of this network. There are a couple other extensions of this. One is extending that Lime route to the Kentlands on Maryland 28. And then there's a whole second phase of this route that's intended to deal with the northern portion of the Quarter Cities Transitway. So it will be a route pattern on the Maryland 355 bus rapid transit system that will then peel off Maryland 355, most likely in the Lake Forest area, and make its way to USG to make those connections between the northern portion of the county that was going to be served by the Quarter Cities Transitway and the life sciences zone here. The rest of that northern portion of the Quarter Cities Transitway will be served by the 355 bus rapid transit in the updated quarter forward plan that planning finished probably 2 or 3 years ago now. So this service, the first 2 lines should be open this fall. And it will be branded as Ride on Extra.
Okay.
And then the bus rapid transit is a higher level of investment in guideway and a higher level of investment in the vehicles and the station amenities. We have a really large bus rapid transit plan, 80-mile network that's planned. The first 15 or so miles of that are in place on US 29, but we have another phase of that project, actually 2 phases of that project that we're working on now. And the other 2 that are advancing into design and construction are the Veers Mill Road corridor and the Maryland 355 corridor. And I can touch on those in the next slide, or a couple slides later. So this is the overall bus rapid transit network. The orange one is the one that's operating between Burtonsville and the Silver Spring Transit Center, and between the Briggs Trainee Park and Ride, which is next to the Montgomery Auto Park, and again, the Silver Spring Transit Center. We got an earmark a year and a half ago to add vehicles to this fleet and extend that service to Maple Lawn, the Applied Physics Lab, and Columbia. So we're in the process of developing an MOU with Howard County to operate that system into Howard County. It will be the first time we've operated into Howard County. Howard County will pay us for the operation of those vehicles, and we will own and maintain the vehicles and staff the system. So the vehicles are going to be purchased with that earmark that we received. So that's pretty exciting. We'd eventually like to have that extend to Ellicott City, but that's in the future for Howard County. Howard County's developing a BRT system plan as well. The other phase 2 of this is to provide a dedicated lane on US 29, or 2 lanes. And those dedicated lanes are between Sligo Creek Parkway near downtown Silver Spring and Tech Road, which is kind of 2/3 of the way up the corridor here. The green line is the Veers Mill project, which we actually have funded for construction. Expect to start construction activity in FY 25. I have it right? We're in 24, 25. And Veers Mill doesn't have as much dedicated lane, but there are bus lanes on there now, so we will be formalizing those with red paint, and hopefully, I don't know whether it passed yesterday or not, it was stuck yesterday, but photo enforcement for bus lane violations, which we advocated hard for this year, but it may not have made it past the goal line yesterday.
You mean at the council?
At the state legislature.
Oh, state legislature.
That authority only exists for Baltimore City right now. We were trying to get it expanded to Prince George's and Montgomery County to use the metro enforcement that was rolled out in DC this year. The 355 project is in design also. The entirety of it is in design. A portion of it is funded for construction. And we have planning studies for 2 of the projects on here, New Hampshire Avenue, which is the wiggly S-shaped line that's in blue on the right side of the diagram, and the North Bethesda Transitway, which goes from the North Bethesda Metro Station to Westfield Montgomery Mall on the left side of the diagram. The ones that are not currently being worked on are University Boulevard, Randolph Road, and Georgia Ave. A little bit more detail on 355. We have $425 million programmed for implementation of this project. Half of that is federal aid that we are in the process of applying for. The $425 million would allow us to implement the project between Montgomery College Rockville and Montgomery College Germantown. The overall project is closer to $1 billion of investment, and the largest component of the capital investment that's in that project is between Rockville and Grosvenor, and we're designing it, going through the environmental process for that, but don't have it funded for construction at the moment. And then, sure.
Do you have a timeline for that northern segment of 355?
We do. It is completed within the next 6 years. So construction is about 1.5 years away, assuming we get our grants, and we're finding the grant process as a critical path item on our Viewers Mill project, because we're falling a little bit behind based on getting all the FTA clearances to get the grant issued. But that's what we're expecting, that it's around a 2030 completion for that first section. And then the Viewers Mill project actually connects to that, so it goes from Montgomery College, Rockville to Wheaton. So you'll have a continuous BRT service between Germantown and Wheaton when those two projects are complete. And the Viewers Mill project is slated to go to construction in this upcoming fiscal year and complete by FY '28. That's the next slide.
I just, what's gonna happen with Observation Drive on the north end?
So we have slowed down Observation Drive, assuming the council adopts that recommendation, which they seem inclined to do. We'll wait for the current planning process that's going on under the planning department's direction to figure out what the preferred alignment is for that, and then the design funds will kick in and we'll begin work on that again.
Do you anticipate that, what is it called, is it extra or what have you, would pick up on Observation at some point, or are you sticking to 355?
So that's an interesting question. You wouldn't know it from this diagram, but the BRT is not on 355 in that part of the county. It follows Ridge Road and Snowden Farm Parkway. And the expectation is as the western side of Clarksburg develops, so your property at ComSat and south of there, there'll be another branch of that would follow Observation Drive, and they would both link up at.
That's fine. I was just confirming that, you know, this is great. I'm thrilled that this is coming. We just want to be prepared to receive the same opportunity in terms of bringing people, bodies through that. I think that's a huge piece of that connection. Love that it goes to the outlets, come down Observation and flow down Observation directly into Germantown.
So those two routes will tie together at some place to be determined, whether that's the outlets or on the east side of 270. I don't know.
Okay. All right, just checking.
Yep. And then I touched on this, but what's interesting, in addition to the bus rapid transit on Viewers Mill Road, is half or more than half of the budget is for pedestrian and bike improvements on Viewers Mill Road, which is one of our high incidence corridors, lots of negative safety outcomes here. So there's a lot of work to complete pedestrian and bike facilities and increase the number of safe crossing opportunities for that project. So it says 2027, which would be FY '28. We're slipping about 6 months in this because our federal grant application process is moving slower than we'd like. Another major economic-oriented investment is the North Bethesda Metro Station, and we submitted a RAISE grant earlier this spring to implement this project. We requested $25 million of federal aid.
And the Chambers sent a letter also supporting that RAISE grant.
So those are it was an interesting application process. We did a joint application process with MDOT and WMATA, and it went really well. It was really difficult to get it started because nobody wanted to take ownership to do the application, but once we got it rolling, it worked exceptionally well. And WMATA led the work to do the application. Montgomery County is the applicant and would receive the funds if we're successful. And MDOT, having MDOT involved in supporting it directly through that application, I think gives it a much stronger chance. And those are some renderings that the team did of what the vision for that is, with a high-rise building above the metro station. You can actually see the Old Georgetown Road Bus Rapid Transit and the 355 Bus Rapid Transit in red on each of the two roads that are next to that building. It's around a $60 million total investment. We're hoping to hear this summer about the raised grants outcome. Oftentimes you have to apply more than once, so that if we don't get it, I think we're ready to apply again and see how that goes.
60 million is for,
The station.
that include the extension to the station, or, like, the station doesn't reach that far, right?
The station actually, the platforms end at the right place. So it's elevator, stairs, fair equipment, new building at ground level. Not really much work in the station itself. And then the foundation elements necessary to support the building above.
That's on land that's owned by WMATA?
WMATA. They own about 30 acres, which is unusual. Most of their new station is not, yes, they own the site of the station, but they don't own the development opportunity around it. Here they own the development opportunity, and there should be a master developer RFP issued by WMATA, jointly by WMATA and the county later this spring, for the first 11 acres of WMATA's property there. Ride On Reimagined is a process that's been going on for about a year and a half now. We're reaching the recommendation stage of this, but it's a strategic plan to guide the next 20 years of the Ride On system development. And the things that are new about this are adjusting the current Ride On network to better serve the bus rapid transit corridors once they're implemented. There are recommendations for new east-west service patterns that don't really exist today, linking the 270 corridor and the Georgia Avenue corridor and the US 29 corridor. And pretty dramatic, the orange blobs you see in the diagram are additional flex zones. So places where you can request your ride and it will take you to a transit node where you can get onto the rest of the system. So we're expanding those to Damascus, Poolesville, some areas in Germantown, so that those areas that are more suburban and lower density, you can get on a transit system at or near your home and then get to the high capacity lines that we'll be providing from the Germantown Transit Center or elsewhere in that network.
With the ride-on system, as I understand, children and students ride free. So is there a coordination, like do the county schools coordinate with you? Like, do they communicate to the students about that?
Yes, the student services offices in the schools provide the youth cruiser pass.
I see.
And you don't really need that on our system. We like to have you tap.
You just
so that
look,
we know.
you just see, and you see it's a student or a child, and they're on.
But those programs extend to Metro Bus. So if you're going to use a Metro Bus, you need to tap.
Okay.
And then the county pays the difference between the Metro Bus fare and zero for those users.
I see.
And it didn't used to be zero, but now it's zero.
Oh, okay.
And there's also seniors ride free, which is the same sort of thing.
Oh, yeah. I use that every day.
Yeah.
How much of the ride-on passengers numbers are, I've always wondered about this, are students and children vis-a-vis adults who ride the ride-on buses? Is it a very small percentage, a big percentage? I've always wondered.
I think we have that information, but I don't have it in my head.
Yeah, I just wonder. It's not important, really, but I've always been curious about that.
Yeah. We do a passenger survey every couple of years, and that's part of it, is to understand the profile of who the customer is.
Of who they are, right. Yeah.
We've had a major emphasis in the last 18 months on improving the service quality of the transit network. We were not in a great place coming out of the pandemic. We managed to sustain service through that period, but
Yeah.
the quality of the service deteriorated pretty significantly, and we had some major staffing challenges that some pay scale adjustments were made that have solved that problem, it appears. But our missed trips were, in the 12 per 1,000 range, meaning out of 1,000 scheduled trips on Ride-On, 12 of them didn't happen. And we've driven that down to 5, which, is a very significant reduction. This is another Vision Zero area, but we often have either medical incidents, crashes, or detours or other disruptions that cause us to miss trips. We're trying to get rid of the ones that are related to not having a driver available or not having the bus available to leave the yard with the trip. So we're doing pretty well in that, but we continue to try to push that down. Our ridership is back to around 58,000 customers per day on the weekday, up 25% over last year. And our complaints are down by 30% since this time last year. So we've done a lot of work with our workforce and the union and resetting our management team to get better performance out of the system. And if our employees were unhappy and dissatisfied, they are not going to provide the service our customers need. So we've been trying to make it a better place to work so that the service people deliver is a better service.
What's the goal as far as ridership? And where are you all trying to get to as far as?
We would like as much as we can. We were in a declining period before COVID. We probably lost 20% in the period between 2016 and 2020, and then lost another 40%. 50%.
You had in 2019. What was the ridership in 2019?
I think the number that I remember, actually in 2019, we're getting close to where we were in 2019. But in 2016, we were more like 70,000 a day instead of 58. We would like to get back there, and the goal through the Climate Action Plan and the county's transportation strategy is to double transit ridership over time. We get more productive use of the assets and resources when the buses are fuller, and it's better for the environment. And frankly, if the system is working the way it's supposed to, it's a nice way to travel.
Yeah, and the new buses are very comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, they're very nice. They're very nice vehicles.
So that brings us to our zero emissions plan. We have roughly 400 buses in service. We actually have more because with all the supply chain issues, we haven't been retiring our old buses. We've been keeping them available.
Right.
We have executed a contract to purchase 100 battery electric buses over the next 3 years.
Oh.
It's a small number, but 14 is actually a very large number of electric buses compared to where most other operators are. So we are one of the top implementers of battery electric buses so far. And we are trying to get to 100% zero emission by 2035, which is our last diesel buses were acquired in 2022 or were delivered in 2022, and they will hit their lifespan right around that year. So we're in pretty good shape to get there, assuming supply chain works and the buses actually work when they're delivered, which is part of the reason we're not sending the old buses away.
Yeah. But those electric buses, they're gorgeous. And they're so quiet. You've got to really be alert that the bus is coming. If you turn the wrong way, if the driver doesn't see you, it's like having a Prius go by. You don't hear it. It just sort of whooshes by. They're very nice vehicles.
And electric isn't our only solution, which I think is the next slide. We got a low emission, no emission grant from FTA about a year and a half ago. And we are in the process of building a new solar electricity generating facility at our Gaithersburg depot. And that will power a hydrogen generation plant, which will use water to create hydrogen. And we can power about 20 vehicles with what we're installing, but with this grant, we will be procuring 13 hydrogen fuel cell buses, which use the electrolysis, use the hydrogen in reaction with water to generate electricity that charges the battery while the bus is in service, and the battery powers the bus. Those buses can run the 200-plus miles that we need them to run on a day without going back for charging. And we are going to deploy them on the Beers Mill BRT when they're delivered. So this is pretty exciting. In our zero emission plan, about half of our fleet looks like it needs to be hydrogen, and about half could be battery electric.
What's the battery range on a bus per day?
Right now, they're about 125 miles, and half our service is above 150 a day.
And
Our maximum is about 250.
what happens in winter? You have to
So
as an electric car owner, I can tell you that unless your battery is preconditioned, your winter reduction.
Yeah, that 125 is a stressed range. So in very warm, very cold, or high passenger load, that's about what we can expect. They're rated higher than that.
Why is that?
As the battery becomes less efficient relative to.
Because of cold air?
Yeah.
It drops, it's extraordinary.
Oh, I didn't realize.
They don't talk about it a lot.
I didn't realize this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And the range declines over the lifespan
I
of
would
the battery.
say, we only had a couple of sub 20 degrees,
mm-hmm.
but I would say when we're sub 20 degrees, if I leave my car outside, 50%.
Yeah, during that real cold spell we had, I can tell you that I was charging the Tesla every other day. And in the summer.
Yeah.
I don't have to do
Well,
that.
in fairness, also, the thing that they're not telling you is that if you install a charger at your house, I've noticed zero change in my electric bill
Me too.
by charging the
Yeah.
car. Like, so, I mean, it's invisible. All you do is go and you plug in your car. You remember, it costs almost $1,500 to put the charger in, but after that moment, like, I have a clue.
Oh.
You literally just plug your car in, you plug your car in, so that's great. The range component is, it can be,
Yeah.
I wouldn't use it to commute, or beyond the region, right?
If you,
Oh,
Like road trip.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
it's difficult. We have 2
Interesting.
EVs, but
In the area, it's fine.
all of these issues that you experience with a passenger car EV are the same with the transit vehicles, but on a larger
yeah.
scale.
And
So,
there's more people relying on it.
Right.
and the cost is a similar thing. A diesel bus right now is, $800,000, and the battery version is $1.5 million, and the fuel cell version is $2 million. So it has a huge financial impact. to
Oh,
do
yeah.
this. And
Wow.
the county council's been good enough to give us advance appropriation to get these first 100 purchased, and has shown resolve to stick to this program.
Okay.
Okay?
Good.
Probably running too slow. I wanted to make sure everybody's aware of the red line closure this summer
Oh, yeah.
between,
Some of us are dreading early June to early September.
yep,
I know, I can't
stations from Tacoma to Glenmont will be closed
close, shut
for
down.
a couple months,
And it's gonna start, and when it would be open up again?
June.
Early June to early September, the purple line.
The Purple Line is one component. They need to build overhead work for the Purple Line above Metro, and Metro's also doing a lot of systems renovations during that period. So we've coordinated with WMATA and Metro on the mitigation plan for this. The Metro has released a lot of the shuttling plans already, and we expect that MDOT SHA is going to be installing bus lanes parallel to the red line on Georgia Avenue for this period, and those may persist beyond the closure. We don't yet know.
Do you think, and I, as one who, I live between the downtown Silver Spring and the Forest Glen Metro stations, those 2 Silver Spring stations, and everyone's dreading what's coming. I mean, really, well, I guess the Silver Spring station has the largest ridership, both rail and bus. I mean, it's, when you're
Yeah.
there, I'm there I'll be there after this meeting, I'll be there, but it's huge. and it's gonna be closed, right? Any chance of maybe some of us are thinking, well, we'll catch the MARC train in downtown Silver Spring and take it straight on that quick shot to Union Station and then get on Metro, right, downtown at Union. Any chance of the state maybe running a few extra MARC
We've asked,
trains?
and they're trying to figure out whether they can do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that would really, I don't know if any of you have ever done, but if you get on the MARC train in downtown Silver Spring and go to Union Station, that trip is like that. It's that MARC train, when it leaves Silver Spring and goes to Union Station, you're there in 10 minutes. It's fast. And they have a number of, you know, during the regular week, you have a number of trains running along that route. But when they shut down the red line, so a request has been made.
Yes,
Yeah.
both for reducing the fare during this period, increasing the service, and delaying the proposed commuter bus cuts until
Yeah.
this is over.
That would be, I mean, I'm just imagining, I mean, it's hard to explain to people who live in the county who are more used to the suburban, typical way of driving around, but downtown Silver Spring, you know, the number of people who are there just getting on the trains and the buses, and that transit center is busy.
Yep.
And the idea of it just being shut down for 3 solid months, I know, okay, I'm sure you're dealing
Yep.
with.
We are coordinating. So I will definitely be,
The other thing is the S9 Metro, and by the way, I want to compliment you on using the same term for the express buses that Metro bus uses. I mean, it's very helpful. The Metro bus express lines are called Extra. So the fact that Ride-On adopted that name too, it really helps the mind,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're getting on a Metro bus or a Ride-On. When you see Extra, you know it's an express bus. They go like that. So the S9 express bus from the Silver Spring Transit Center that shoots down 16th Street to downtown, and then the same express bus that shoots down Georgia Avenue downtown. Maybe if Metro Bus runs on those express lines, a few extra, maybe you're
They're
talking.
doing point-to-point service, so not every shuttle will just go station to station.
Oh, great. I was wondering
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
That would be helpful.
They released their plan, I think it was last week,
mm,
for the shuttle operation, so that's part of the component.
Oh, that's
Is
great.
you'll have a bus that goes Glenmont, Wheaton, and then downtown, or Forest Glen, Silver Spring, and then downtown.
shoot
So you
down.
don't have to ride the bus to each station along the way.
That, I'm glad y'all are thinking along those
Yeah.
lines. I just can't imagine 50,000 people. I mean, I don't know if it's 50,000 a day that uses it, but it seems like it's 50,000 people a day using. And the idea of it, okay, we're just gonna close it for 3 months, and where are these people going? It's gonna be pandemonium, but I'm sure.
It's usually not when it actually happens.
That's
but it
good. But
looks
you'll
like
be.
it should be pandemonium when you're planning it.
Well, thank you for thinking it through and coordinating with WMATA.
It's been a good collaboration between the three agencies. Yeah.
yeah.
Again, we touched on parking, but a big component of parking is also the redevelopment of our parking lots. So if you can, I won't go into all those parking issues, but
Yeah.
one of the things that's been a challenge is parking demand cratered 2020 to 2023.
Yeah.
And the patterns of parking in the parking lot districts are different. We don't
Yeah.
have 8-hour parkers anymore.
Oh,
To the extent we used
Interesting.
to, we have 4-hour parkers. So people are working a part day in their
Oh.
office and a part day not, or just visiting the businesses. And the parking lot districts used to send a lot of money to the urban districts for the other urban district support. In this budget, the county executive has dramatically reduced the diversion of parking lot district revenue to the urban districts and funded them through the urban district tax and the general fund instead. And if we think it makes sense to continue to do that, to get the parking lot districts to be self-sufficient financially again. And they have not been self-sufficient over the last couple of years. We've had some fee increases and a lot of capital project deferrals. and a lot of reduction in other maintenance services. So we are trying to get those capital projects back on track because they're not really discretionary projects. They're sinkholes, they're water and elevator systems, they're failing safety and life safety systems. So we're trying to get those back on track. And one of the ways that it looks like we can do that is if we reduce the subsidies going from parking to other things and try to get the parking lot districts to be self-sustaining. So you see that in the operating budget that was released a couple of weeks ago, and it may increase in future years so that the urban districts work and their funding streams and parking lots and theirs, and there's less crossover between them than there has traditionally been. And then real estate development, we are working on a lot of different real estate projects. This one finished its general or development agreements a few weeks ago, which is a significantly affordable housing project conversion of parking lots to parks in Bethesda. This is near the Benihana in that area. There are other ones that are in development with the Farm Women's Market that we're getting close to having the development agreements in place for that. And I know Mel is on the meeting, and we are doing a lot with United Therapeutics in downtown Silver Spring. We're about to issue a request for development proposals for another parking lot in Silver Spring, and entertain ideas to redevelop these parking lots whenever an adjacent owner or others have interest in doing that. So it's a very, very busy set of activities for us.
So you're getting a lot of requests in these parking garages to add more charging stations.
We're not getting a lot of requests necessarily, but we are seeing the utilization go up, and we have been adding charging capacity. We did a number of chargers with Pepco, which is not our provider, but we've done easement agreements to allow Pepco to install those chargers, and we got an earmark this year to expand the EV parking in Silver Spring. So we are working to do that, but we haven't seen the demand eclipse the capacity in those facilities yet.
Yeah, I know the demand for electric cars has actually come down. I personally got tired of what I had, so I got rid of it and got a hybrid. But I go into the garages and I see that they're completely full at all times.
Yeah, we do enforce the time limit, so we will ticket you if you're there for more than the 4 hours. You can't park all day at the chargers.
Can I ask you a question that's in the chat?
Sure.
If you could comment on Park and Planning's efforts to improve the development review process, and in particular, Department of Transportation's role in providing comments on plans, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Sure.
Al Wallace.
There are a couple different elements here. There's the work that was done by the commission that concluded last year, and I think they identified a need to update the lead agency memorandum of understanding that was established quite a long time ago. It was probably had a 9 in the year. And we are engaged with planning permitting services to do that. We've been talking with permitting services about devolving some of our responsibilities in the development review process, like street tree location, street light location, to permitting. And we are working internally to improve our review of the traffic elements at the preliminary plan stage and to stay consistent with our recommendations that were made at the preliminary plan stage, because a lot of the challenges we've had have been when a plan comes back very late in the design process for the development for signing and marking approval. Traffic conditions are different than what our team expected them to be in the preliminary plan stage, and we're requesting changes to design at a stage that's too late. So we're trying to get some more attention paid earlier in that process so that becomes even rarer. It's not an everyday occurrence. It's a relatively small set of problems, but when it happens, they're big problems. So we're working to try to avoid that And then there's also the growth and infrastructure policy update that's underway now. We actually have a coordination meeting with planning this afternoon to share some thoughts on that. So I hope that answers Scott's question. Maintenance, again, a big component of the capital improvements program is for maintenance-related activities. There's a $20 million increase over something like a $50 to $60 million base budget for accelerating concrete repair and paving programs over the next 6 years. That's helping us keep pace with inflation. It's not going to allow us to do a great deal more, but at least we can continue to accomplish the same amount of maintenance that we have been before. I'll try to go a little faster now. These are quicker. You're all familiar with our winter operations. The team did really well this year. They were excited to get to use all the equipment this year.
2 4-inch
Couple times over.
Yeah, 2 4 inches.
But that's a big component, as I mentioned earlier, of the Highway Division's operations, having everything ready for when storms, both winter and summer storms happen. We touched on this, but we maintain 67,000 streetlights. About half of those are actually maintained by the utility companies and half maintained by us. Ours have all been converted to LED, and we are also installing a lot more traffic signals. And those of you in the development process know we've been requiring more traffic signals than we had in the past, largely on pedestrian safety grounds, to make sure people have the opportunity to pass across these 5+ lane roads like you see here in Aspen Hill.
Hey, Chris, Phil Hummel has a follow-up question, I think. As a part of the growth and infrastructure policy update, does the Department of Transportation anticipate advocating for any changes to the county's impact tax laws and which improvements are eligible for credits?
I don't think we plan to advocate for changes because the impact tax scheme is, I'm going to use these words, is convoluted. And the basis of the impact tax scheme, when it was established, was based on needs on the county road network for capacity. So that's the basis of the tax. So if we were to open this up to other types of improvements, that means the basis of the tax should also be reviewed. And it's likely that if we were to allow safety-related improvements, which we do not use as the county impact tax funds to implement, or maintenance-related things, which we do not use impact tax funds to implement, or improvements to state roads, which we do not use impact tax funds to implement, it means that the base of that tax should reflect the cost of all of those other improvements. So that's principally why I don't think we will advocate for that, because I don't think there's an appetite anywhere for us to say, sure, we will allow credit for all these other things, but the tax doubles. Alternatively, you could conceive of, let's get rid of credits and cut the tax so that the yield is the same and we can get out of the continual struggle about whether something is eligible or not eligible. And the development team has an expectation that they were going to have an offset from their costs from impact tax credits that, when you get into the details of the code, are not allowable. That would be something I could envision, but I think going the other direction is probably too hard of a lift to take. And the county executive has made the point that it would make sense to have a lower burden and fund these infrastructure needs in infrastructure districts. And I do think that makes sense. Rather than a one-time upfront charge, you would have a continuous low rate that would fund those infrastructure investments. But I don't think this process will lead to that outcome. I think it's probably too big a question for the update of the growth and infrastructure policy. That's my story.
Phil, if you have any follow-up or additional questions, jump in or put it in the chat.
But again, we are meeting with planning this afternoon, and it's going to be one of the topics we review with them. You've seen a lot of bikeway implementation, and more and more of these protected intersections. And I have some detail on upcoming bikeway and ped projects in the next slides. But this is something we have a lot of emphasis on in the capital program. Bridges, again, 513 bridges maintained by the county. We have some major bridge construction that's going to happen in the next couple of years. Garrett Park Road is the most significant of those. But this is an ongoing area of our activity. A lot of this is state and federally funded, fortunately. Capitol Crescent Surface Trail, we are looking to complete the trail connection to the Purple Line so that it's available when the Capitol Crescent Trail to Silver Spring opens in 2027. The state did incentivize the contractor in the most recent amendment, open the trail early. They have a financial incentive to open the trail early. And we need to complete the component on 47th Street and through the Elm Street Park to make that connection, and we expect to have that available when the Capitol Crescent Trail opens. There's another major bikeway project in Wheaton on Amherst Avenue that's looking to get ready for construction. This is on Amherst Avenue, parallel to Georgia Avenue in the CBD area, so that there'll be a protected bikeway for you to bike past the Central Business District, not necessarily through it.
Does it go up to the new Wheaton Library and Community Center?
Just about, yeah. It ends just to the south of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that would be useful.
Metropolitan Branch Trail, we revised the scope of this. The T&E committee agreed with that revision to eliminate the tunnel under Burlington Avenue and make a connection to the Fenton Street Bikeway project that's about getting ready for construction. So we're able to implement this project within the approved budget with that change. And the construction is, a contract has been awarded. The area around the B&O train station has been closed off as the staging area, and the bridge construction should begin soon over Georgia Avenue.
Is Tacoma Park, the city government, now cooperating with the county on the building of all of this? I mean, there was a time where
I don't know. That's
they
a good
were,
question.
yeah, there was a time where, back when they were kind of obstructionist, and I trust now things between the city and the county have gotten better in recent times about.
In my time, I've had no negative interactions with the city.
That's great.
So that's 8 years.
Yeah, that's good. There was a time where it was difficult in the planning of this countywide trail system going all the way down through DC, all the way down to Union Station, which is where this trail goes. I mean, it looks small here. It's not. This is literally the Capitol Crescent Trail with a different name as it goes through downtown Silver Spring, but it's the same hiker-biker trail, but the name changes.
Right.
And
so the Purple Line is building everything to the west, up to the Silver Spring Transit Center. The portion at the Silver Spring Transit Center was built with the Transit Center in Progress Place.
Yeah.
And then the section to the south of here is completed. So this is the quote, final section in Montgomery County.
All the way through DC, past Catholic University, all the way down to Union Station. So it's encouraging to see progress being made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you wanted to ride from Georgetown to Union Station the long way,
the long loop,
you could do it.
Yeah.
Bill Hummel has another question. Okay. He calls it a personal issue, so I think this one's for him.
Personal issue.
What are your thoughts?
I wasn't there and I don't know what happened.
What are your thoughts on the state of maintenance of the real-time arrival screens at bus stations?
It's not good. And those screens are too
large,
too attractive to rocks and bats.
Oh.
And the information that we're trying to communicate at those screens is too complex.
Wow.
So we are looking to go to a smaller e-paper style screen, which is a lower power requirement, a more durable display, and to simplify the information to have it focus more on the next bus arrival time rather than a graphical display of routes and where the buses might be. And that the equipment is not particularly weather tolerant, and it just has not been a good rollout. So we're stepping away from the 60-inch home TV screen in a case.
Will that bus
had been-
information still be available on your phone?
Yes. It's the same feed of information.
Yeah.
And the same feed of information goes to all of the apps that provide transit arrival information.
At the station, it'll just focus on next bus, but you could still be using.
Yeah.
My son used that app, I think he's now driving, but he'd use it and say, oh, bus coming here. So if he wouldn't need it necessarily. It's really on his way to the bus that he needs to know how close it's tracking versus when he's actually standing there. Have that, I think that's helpful.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's been a really difficult challenge. And we've replaced the whole bus dispatch software and are replacing all of the Wi-Fi routers, which are what communicates the bus location information. And that has improved the quality of the information, and we're still working through getting it to where it needs to be. Most of the issues with the information quality we have now are near the terminal stations for the routes. Like if you try to use this system at the bus stop across the street from this building on Monroe Place, it's not going to give you very good information because the dispatch system hasn't caught up to the bus movement when it left Rockville when the driver logged on. So those are the issues we're trying to work through. And getting our drivers to log into the right route when they leave the station has been a challenge. But yep, we're moving away from those screens that you've seen in these stations. I figured this group might have some questions about what's happening with 270 and 495. There has not been a huge amount of communication about what the change in plans is. There were a series of public meetings, I think they were last fall, might have been longer ago than that MDOT hosted to get feedback on how the state should proceed. They've applied for some federal grants and have not received them yet for Section A and B. On this diagram, they are going to be meeting with us in the coming weeks to talk about how to adjust the transit elements of this project to match a scope that's Sections A and B, which is the 270 split to Virginia. They anticipate advancing that component of the project first. In the information they've provided to the Transportation Planning Board, who will be here at your next meeting, it sounds like. They are putting segments C and D on hold, which is the Rockville stretch of 270 and the East Spur, and are looking to start the study of 270 north of 370, which the previous administration never got off the ground. And then once there's a recommendation for segment E, which is from 370 to Frederick, to then revisit the program for D, which would be between their first phase and the longer-term plan for the whole corridor.
E is going to start with the state this fall?
That's what they've told TPB. Now, I've been told certainly a half dozen times that was about to start, and it's nearly about to started on several occasions.
Right.
But I hope that happens so that they have a comprehensive plan for 270 before they build something on 270. And where everybody will line up in opposition or support of this is TBD.
Right. So, this is a big question about, appreciate you bringing this up about, what is the state doing? Everything seems to be in limbo, and I take it it's going to be in limbo for a little longer.
I think they were about to embark on something and
then pulled back.
Well, we had some meetings that were getting scheduled and the bridge collapse occurred in Baltimore. Things have gone quiet, so that recently.
Right.
But I think they will, it sounds like they're about to get out in front of people again with information about their plan.
Okay.
I can't guarantee that or speak for them, but that's my read of where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Purple Line, we've talked a little bit about this. It appears to be on schedule for a late 2027 opening. There's 65% complete in construction. A big element for the county is the Bethesda South entrance mezzanine. WMATA has advertised for that design-build contract. WMATA will manage that construction, and the county will pay for it. That's the linchpin for connecting the Purple Line to the Red Line at Bethesda.
One question people are beginning to have as they're starting to think about, you know, when it opens, is are there discussions between your department, WMATA, and MDOT, which will operate the Purple Line, for people having the same card to use so you can transfer seamlessly between Metro Rail or Metro Bus and the Purple Line and vice versa? I mean, the state's not going to have a separate, hopefully, card, and everyone has to have two things to be able to, I mean, the big part of the Purple Line is the seamless transfer to Metro, right? But is anyone thinking about how that's going to work?
Gus, you could do three if you really wanted to. You could take the Purple Line to the Red Line, jump on the Red Line, go north, and jump on, need a ride-on bus too, and it's the same trip.
So I just thought I'd ask the question.
Three systems in my.
I know
We
it,
use Smart
There's
Trip.
more than that even. I mean, there's Mark and commuter bus.
right,
Yeah.
it
Um,
gets really complicated,
Yeah.
but if it were just, I know, you're right, but if it's just when the Purple Line opens to the public, you know, let's face it, to the public, when they hear the Purple Line, they think Metro. They think they're gonna take their card that they use on Metro every day and hop on a Purple Line train. Now, hopefully that would be the case, but is there a discussion about how this is gonna work for the regular person out there?
There was a lot of discussion of this issue in 2018 and 19. And there hasn't been any discussion of this issue since then, for obvious reasons.
Right.
But it,
But now that
It's
we're
good to
3
bring
years,
it up
I mean,
again,
we're
because-
3 years away from the opening, and it's gonna be chaos out there if people show up and think, oh, I have to use different, I mean, I hope that your department, MDOT, and WMATA are actually talking about how this is gonna work for the average person out there. Yeah.
I mean, they put a system in like Smart Pass, so,
Smart Trip,
Right.
yeah.
you know.
Right, but just so
but
you know.
MTA doesn't use the same fare system as WMATA.
And just,
You know,
see, what happens is, at this table,
Yeah,
about 4 years ago, when the question was raised, the person speaking on that day said, we haven't really talked about this at all, and that's a very good question.
I don't know that situation is very much different. It needs to be.
they need to solve that.
Well, we're only 3 years away from this thing opening, and you talked to,
On a 10-year construction, on a 20-year plan, on a,
but the reality is, when you watch what's going on, they're going like gangbusters. They're out there 7 days a week building this thing. It's gonna open in 3 years. And to the average person out there, they think this is part of Metro. And they're used to, oh, my card is good on Metro and on the ride-on buses, fantastic. And,
well, and then there's the fare, what's the fare gonna be? And is the fare on a Purple Line gonna be consistent with, I needed this to go across county, but
Yes.
I have to use Metro to go this direction for X price, and this may be a different pricing strategy?
It will be. It's guaranteed to be different.
and so, but, you know, if you take a student who lives in Rockville, who goes to the University of Maryland at College Park, you know, they shoot down on the Red Line and to Bethesda. They get on the Purple Line in Bethesda and head over to the campus, right? I mean, there's gonna be a lot of that. Everyone's thinking a single unitary pay system. And I just hope that your department is starting to talk with the state and WMATA.
It's a good reminder to refresh that, because everybody's been so focused on the construction
I know.
issues.
I
Yeah.
know, but it's gonna take 3 years for you all to decide what to do, and it's gonna open in 3 years. That's the only reason I'm asking the
Yeah.
question.
That's a good question.
Bill has
Remains a
interjected
good
that
question.
MTA's charm card works in WMATA stations.
It's charm card.
Phil, do you want to jump in? For Baltimore Metro. Oh, as in Charm City, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Last. So, notwithstanding the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act, funding of transportation continues to be a major challenge, and more so at the state and local level than at the federal level now.
Right.
The State Transportation Trust Fund was essentially going belly up this year. The legislature did a number of things in this session. I assume in the weeks after today, which this session ended last night, we'll have a better understanding of what all of those changes are.
Yeah.
We understand, though I have not seen it yet, that one of them is guaranteeing the level of state support to local transit providers like us, which was a big threat earlier this year, that we were going to lose $17 million of state support for ride-on earlier this year, but that was averted by the governor's action. And I think the budget actions this year guarantee the level of state support to local transit, but we'll see that when the bills emerge. There will be the need to shore up other elements of the state financial program next year. We would love to see state revenue options for transportation investment have local options, so that if they do a registration surcharge, that the local government would have the option of piggybacking upon that to meet local needs. There's been discussion of regional authorities for transportation, like the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, that can manage those funding streams and target investment. That would be useful if that sort of scheme emerged next year. And part of the reason this is challenging is the county's bond issuances have been declining, and the competition for those resources is increasing. So our ability to meet the transportation investment needs with locally generated revenue is becoming less and less. So we need the state funds to be matches for the federal funds if we don't have enough local funds. So all of that is an area that needs a lot of work and focus, and I'm sure something the chamber would be interested in the coming years. But there were some good outcomes in this legislative session. Another significantly good outcome as of 8 p.m. last night, the bill passed that it gives us the lottery diversion funds. So we are going to be guaranteed $20 million a year and up to $27 million a year for the implementation and operation of the Flash BRT system. So that
Very good.
that passed last night.
Great.
Not the 11th hour, but close to it. So that allows us to proceed with our BRT plan and with more certainty.
Good.
So we're really happy about that.
Yeah,
But
that's
that's
wonderful.
the last thing I had to share today.
That's great. Other comments or questions? Any progress on the long planned and then delayed and planned and delayed Georgia Avenue improvement project between the Beltway and going down towards 16th Street?
I believe it is delayed with the state funding situation, and I
Okay.
don't believe that funding was restored.
Okay.
They restored principally operating expenses and not capital projects.
Oh, okay.
It's still in that program, but the funding has moved.
Okay.
Hey, Chris, this is Stuart. Thanks for all of that information. It was a great presentation. We really appreciate the updates on everything. On the Great Seneca Transit Network that you talked about, I think you said the pink and the lime lines are opening up later this year. The Kentlands leg, what's the timing of that, if you know, and is that considered part of the Great Seneca Transit Network or part of the Are they calling it corridor connectors? And what is that distinction? Can you talk a little bit about that distinction?
Sure. It is part of the Great Seneca Transit Network. It's a future phase that's not currently funded. We didn't have the capacity to fund beyond these first two lines in this round of the CIP. The Great Seneca Transit Network is specifically focused on serving that life sciences area and is a capital project that we have and are managing. The corridor connectors overlap with that. That's in the I-270 corridor forward plan that the planning department published and was approved about a year and a half ago. Those corridor connectors cover more territory, and it's a bigger network than what we currently have planned to budget on, but the concept is the same.
So the
I know
county's
Casey
timing
had a-
is unknown at this point?
Unknown at this point.
Okay. Thanks.
Casey has,
Just a couple questions. The BRT, does that require any additional right-of-way?
Yes. So in the part that we are advancing now, it's relatively limited. There's some sliver requirements along frontage, maybe a couple full takes, but it's relatively limited for the first two projects. The project from Rockville to Grosvenor has very significant right-of-way needs.
Second question, do you have any details on the Lake Forest Mall Transit Center relocation that you could share?
Yes. That plan is going through review with the city of Gaithersburg now, the SDP, and that schematic development plan, I think that is. I'm not as familiar with their process, is under review. As a development rights agreement is also, I think, being proffered there by the developer. We have coordinated with their development team and the city on identifying a location for moving the Lake Forest Transit Center. And that location is on Russell Avenue, kind of in basically the centroid of that space. They have a retail cluster on the north end, a housing cluster on the south. The transit center is in the middle of that on Russell Avenue. The BRT, 355 BRT will be on Russell Avenue there, not 355, and will serve that. We're negotiating the acquisition of a 2 or so acre parcel from the Lake Forest area to accommodate that. And as part of that, we would abandon the easement that's on Lost Knife where the current transit center is.
And the design of that, is it going to be kind of outside open air, or was that going to be incorporated into the development project, into a building or something?
In our work with the development team in the city and our folks, we are headed towards an open air design.
I mean, like in Germantown, the Germantown Transit Center, that idea?
More than that,
Oh, okay.
but not, we looked at a lot of precedents of in-building transit centers and found most of them to be quite unappealing.
Okay.
More like Montgomery Mall.
Probably like that, but a little larger and nicer finishes.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
The
Good.
architecture of Montgomery Mall is a little austere.
Location is a little, you know. I just asking, like,
Yeah.
it's covered,
Yeah,
but it's
sort
not
of like,
covered,
sort of like,
not in the building, but it's got something, like, I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the.
like that but with a different architectural approach, less corrugation.
You're talking about a bill in the General Assembly. Is it the one that requires fines collected as a result of violations by school bus monitoring cameras?
No,
Okay.
that's a different.
That was Prince George's Center, Montgomery delegation.
It was Delegate Robin Lewis of Baltimore is the bill sponsor. But it was, from my understanding, as of yesterday, held up with a lot of other photo, video enforcement bills.
Nope.
Okay, all right.
No, sir.
Yeah.
So I work in the downtown Silver Spring area, and one of our challenges in that area is with the parking. When we have bus parking, we would reserve those spots, but then we would find that people would park in the spots, which causes us an issue because then our groups can't park there. and then we don't have parking for.
Mm-hmm.
So, as soon as a meter, you know, runs out, you get a ticket really, really quick, right? But for some reason, people don't respect the signs on those meters, and they still park there because they know they're not getting towed. So what is not connecting with the process of ticketing and towing? Is there a limited staff for the towing process, or like, how does that work?
That's a good question. We don't typically tow unless it's a repeat offense, blocking a travel lane, or a safety-related issue. But I don't think there's a limitation on our towing if it's marked tow zone.
But if the meters, there's a consign saying you can't park there,
Mm-hmm.
you still park there, so they won't get towed.
They can be. We need to connect you with the parking operations staff. We don't automatically call for towing for parking violations. The fines are high, but we're friendlier than that. We should connect with that, because if it's obstructing a planned use, then towing it should be
We have
blocked.
to result in partnering up with the local church, because they have created issues for our establishment.
If you want to get in touch with, I'll give you a card. You can get in touch with me, and we'll connect you with the parking operations folks.
They'll tow in 2 seconds on Woodmont Avenue.
Well, that's a peak period
I know.
travel lane, yeah. So they're in those locations, they're ready to tow. Like they know at 4 o'clock
Oh, I
towing
know.
starts.
That's this person.
That's fine, but I can help you get in touch with someone.
Well, yeah.
And so I think, thank you, everybody online for participating today. We appreciate that. And Chris and Emily, thank you for
Yeah,
coming
great.
today. We're
Yeah.
maybe a minute or two over, but we had a very full presentation, and I think we
Oh.
asked questions of you all, so it was going on, so it
Perfect.
dealt really well.
No, this is most informative. We really appreciate you coming.
Yep, thank
Good
you.
to meet you, Emily.
Good, nice to meet you too.
And, again, thanks to everyone, especially for this really helpful thing. It's so many issues.
Yep.
I mean, it's just so many going on.
Happy to share, and if there are issues that come up outside of these sorts of briefings, feel free to reach out to us.
Thank you. Of course, Brian is our connector.
We believe we're members of your organization, so.
But thank you to everybody, and next week, we'll be back here at the table with the new head of Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. He's new, Clark Mercer, and he is bringing his Director of Transportation with him, who's been around longer. So
Yep.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
May 14th, yep. Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Chris.
All right, bye.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.